Monster Tech is doing a giveaway on my channel. Stay tuned for details on how to enter. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about the ships that make up the rear guard of larger fighting forces and how they could dramatically influence battles in the future. There is going to be a healthy amount of speculation here, but I want to look at what we have planned and make predictions about large-scale tactics. And to start, we actually need to look at the front lines, the fighters. My prized ship at the moment is my Scorpius. It's a very capable, nimble ship that can dish a surprising amount of firepower. And if we look at Urkel.games, we can see that the pilot has a max DPS of 1068. This is when using 4 size 3 energy weapons and allocating all power to weapons. So while it represents the max DPS, it's not realistic to actual battle conditions. In a dogfight, you'll be constantly switching power between weapons, shields, and thrusters to get the respective boost to shield resistance and recharge, weapon recharge rate, and afterburner recharge rate. Using only energy weapons means that you have to share your power more frequently between those 3 subsystems. Yet, all energy loadouts are very common in Star Citizen for one huge bonus. They never truly run out. If you're looking to keep grinding bounty missions, the need to return to base to rearm ballistics is often too much of a hassle to want to equip ballistic weapons. For the hunter on the patrol, the ability to keep engaging in fight after fight is worth the trade-off on damage. For reference, how much damage are we losing out on? Using 4 ballistic Gatlings in place of those repeaters, we see our max DPS jump up to, wait, this can't be right, 3,200? That is more than 3 times the energy loadout amount. But there's another huge benefit here. Since the ballistic loadout does not rely on your capacitors, you now only need to manage power between your shields and thrusters. This means more time taking advantage of the shield buff and more time with your shields up. This can very much mean the difference between a win and a loss between 2 otherwise identical ships. But the big downside to ballistics has always been their limited capacity and required rearmament at stations and landing pads. So in spite of the massive advantage ballistics are in a firefight, they are often underutilized for this reason. In an event like Xenothreat, as we just finished, the sheer number of targets would necessitate constant trips back and forth between the battlefield and MIC L1. Certainly a quick way to deplete any remaining motivation that survived through the server issues and other problems present with Xenothreat. But what happens when the rearguard ships come to play? These are the ships that do not boast a lot of raw DPS on their own, but are certainly force multipliers. Ships like the Vulcan, Liberator, and Crucible. Starting with the Crucible, this ship might seem boring at first glance. It's a dedicated repair ship, but having one on the field doing repairs just off the main lines means that your ship can get back into the fight much faster than the current method of dying, teleporting back to MICL1, and waiting for the claim process. It also potentially means saving a lot of money not having to exercise those insurance claims, and all the while means that your force's ships are more active more often. In this simple sense, the Crucible becomes a force multiplier that gets your fighters back in the game. This becomes even more relevant in future systems like Pyro, as we'll cover in a bit. The Vulcan, on the other hand, does refueling, repairing, and rearming. So, as we've been looking at the massive benefits ballistics have over their energy counterparts, the Vulcan makes it much more feasible to run an all-ballistic loadout regardless of the length of battle. Instead of making a quantum jump to station, you can simply exit the battlefield by a few kilometers and get refitted by the Vulcan and be back in the fight. And you'll find that I'm using that phrase a lot, back in the fight. That's where these ships shine. They're not amazing tanks or cannons in their own right. They're support ships. They work best by supporting. And in this case, just like a healer class in any other game, they get the actual tanks and DPS classes back up and running. In the context of Star Citizen, that means bringing the benefits of full-fledged stations onto the battlefield for faster reaction and less downtime. But there is another area in which these ships really start to shine, and that is in the case of infiltration into enemy territory. With systems on the horizon like Pyro, we are being shown a universe that is much less friendly than the Stanton system. Being able to rely on having stations even remotely accessible that can repair and rearm ships will be less and less of an option the further into hostile space you choose to venture. In cases such as this, having Vulcans and Crucibles on standby represents the difference between laying siege to an enemy or simply wasting bullets. But here the Liberator also starts to come in really handy. The Liberator will have some capability of the two aforementioned ships, in the sense that players will be able to do rearmament and repair manually while a ship is in the hangar, but it will be at a lesser degree compared to the dedicated ships we've already covered, and will likely rely more on hand tools as compared to larger ship-mounted tools and drones. No, the Liberator will not be as helpful in those regards, but what it does do is enable further reach into enemy space by virtue of fuel costs and drive capabilities of the ships it carries. Rather than have your fighters burn through all their fuel trying to get to the field and risk not even reaching it, the Liberator handles that load for them and takes them much deeper than they could otherwise reach. To put this into context, using the default quantum drive of the Gladius, which has a max range of 32 million kilometers, the Gladius cannot react quickly to come to aid in Xenothreat if it finds itself even just as far as Crusader. This actually came to bite me in the butt in my own playthrough, as I quickly learned that I should have used a more capable ship for transport. But if I had had the opportunity to board a Liberator, that would mean being able to reach battlegrounds in the Gladius that would otherwise be inaccessible, along with two other pilots in their own ships. From that perspective, the DPS of the Liberator is actually a function of how many ships it can bring to bear in battle, somewhere between 2463 and 7200, assuming 3 Gladii using either energy or ballistic loadouts respectively. And so long as we are relegated to the Stanton system, where stations are abundant and resources seemingly infinite, this doesn't seem like a big deal. After all, you still can navigate to anywhere in Stanton in your Gladius, you just might have to make more stops. So, let's look at some distances in Pyro, our second system to be added to the game. I know that a lot of this information is subject to change, and certainly until we have it in hand, it's very much subject to a lot of speculation. But currently, we are being told that Pyro will be about 3 times the size of Stanton. Simply put, your Gladius might actually get stuck to one planet's radius without additional workarounds. Sure, you can travel in a long-range ship, and assuming no changes to insurance, issue a claim at the new station as a way to bypass the range limitation of a Gladius. But any such workaround is going to add a significant slowdown to your reaction time. Whereas, if it is as simple as hopping into your Org's Liberator and allowing it to handle the quantum logistics, you can get to the fight in a fraction of the time. Not to mention that as the Gladius is currently one of the top meta ships, any workaround as previously described also means stepping down your combat ability to some degree if you're either to engage the enemy in the longer range ship or get caught en route in that ship. Either way, the Liberator gives a huge boost to the efficacy of the fighting force it is supporting. Those workarounds also rely on there being a station you can use for that insurance claim close enough to your chosen field of battle, and this is not always going to be an option. Suppose the only station in the vicinity is under enemy control. You're not getting any ships out of there. And ships like the Liberator may be your only shot of even making it to the battlefield. Since the Liberator has auto turrets for protection, it is also a relatively low maintenance larger ship that does not require as much babysitting in the way of a fighter escort for protection. So it can bring more fighters to the battlefield and also ensure that they are on the front lines instead of acting as escorts. And our other 2 ships are also more important in these cases as well. If the ability to rely on stations is taken away, then your only chance of staying in the fight after being shot down will be to have repairs done in the field. Otherwise, you might just not be able to come back at all. In that case, every ship that goes down on your side is a fighter lost and a win for the opposition. But being able to recoup those ships and get them operational again means that your force can continue the fight long past the capability of those fighters on their own. Of course, we also need to mention the importance of keeping your pilots in fighting condition as well, because it's never just the ship that goes down, as you often die yourself too. So having a few ships capable of acting as respawn locations means that you can wake up and get back to fighting much faster, if at all. And that's where ships like the Carrack, my Galaxy down the line someday, the Apollo, and even the 890J can act as combat support ships. While you are waking up and getting your spacesuit on, an SRV brings your crippled ship to the Crucible so that it can get repaired, and by the time you taxi over from the Galaxy to the Crucible, your fighter is ready to go again and you're back in business. And after the battle is won, then salvage ships can come in to gather materials from the field and convert them back into usable building materials so that your large force can continue onto the next war campaign. Your transport ships can drop off your ground support vehicles to hold the ground you just gained and spread out in search of resources, and on you go, commanding and conquering more lands and territories. In conclusion, the most effective fighting force isn't just the team that has the most meta fighters and DPS options, but rather it will be the force that strategizes better in having a balanced complement of support ships to keep those ships and pilots operational. These ships make it possible for otherwise limited combat ships to penetrate deep into enemy territory and enter battlefields that would otherwise be inaccessible. They also present ways to tame more hostile environments and increase the efficacy of a fighting force in areas with limited resources. While, at the moment, we rely on having an abundance of stations, we know that will be changing as more systems are introduced. Luxuries, such as fully equipped stations, will be less common, and long-range ships such as those in the support category will be critical for war campaigns in hostile environments. As is often the case in war, the best attack is not just who carries the big stick, but also having the capability of wielding it effectively, and that can only be done with an adequate support wing in the background. I have intentionally left certain larger ships out of this conversation, as I plan to make another video talking about them specifically. Things like the Kraken, the Javelin, the Perseus, and the Polaris. This video has been tailored more to talk about how a fighter complement in the future will rely on support ships to be the most effective. And we've looked at some examples here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have I missed something? In what ways do you see these larger support ships coming into play in the future? And ladies and gentlemen, MonsterTech is doing a giveaway on this channel. If you want a chance to win a set of chair or desk mounts, all you have to do is like and subscribe to my channel and comment on any of my videos during the giveaway period with that video's corresponding secret word. Today's secret word is the name of one of the 3 ships discussed in this video. Talk to me in the comments about how you think you would use this ship to its fullest capability, and I'll know you were paying attention. As for myself, I love MonsterTech. They make fantastic products. You've seen me using their chair in stream many times at this point, and it's amazing how adaptable this chair is and how it just really lends itself to all the kinds of projects that I envision myself using it in and things that I've already done with it. I mean, we've added the chair rest, we've added the footrest. It's got the magnetic mounts that were built custom for me, and I just can't say enough about this chair. I really like it. It's comfortable after long periods of sitting, which is, that's saying a lot. You know, there's not a lot of chairs that hold up to that kind of rigor after, 4-hour gaming session where you still feel comfortable and your back doesn't hurt. So I'm a huge fan of MonsterTech, and I'm really glad to have them as a sponsor. If you want to get 5% off your order, use code ODDJOB at checkout, and they'll take care of you. Other than that, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and let me know what you think. And until next time, this is Odd Job Entertainment, signing off.